A big development tonight in a story that we have been following here. The government has been seizing IRS refunds from regular Americans to pay off old debts of their family members. But is the government about to cave? Fox News senior judicial analyst Judge Andrew Napolitano is with us tonight. Judge, great to see you. So let's first tell the viewers exactly what the feds have been doing, because we said earlier, if you're expecting your IRS refund, you might not be getting it, depending on what the government does.
The feds have been seizing refund checks from adult children whose parents were allegedly overpaid Social Security when the children were infants. The parents are now dead. In one of the cases, it was 44 years later. The lady is now in her early 50s. She was a pre-teenager when her mother allegedly was overpaid by the federal government. 44 years later, the Social Security Administration decides we're going to seize that money. How do they do it? They send a notice to the last known address of these people. They haven't lived there in 10 years, so They get no notice. They then have a farce of a hearing before one of their own hearing officers. There's nobody there to resist them. They get a judgment against these people, and they seize the refund check. Now, Megan, you're a lawyer. I'm a lawyer. Many people are watching us now are lawyers. They know that you cannot attribute the debts of the parent to the child when the child had nothing to do with incurring the debts.
Who gives them the authority? They slipped this into a bill back in 2008 having to do with farming, and it was signed into law. What gives them the authority to try to make the child pay the parent's debt and go back 30, 40 years?
Just like the previous segment in which you showed the Bureau of Land Management acting like they were thugs, these people are doing the same thing. Why do they do it? Because they can get away with it.
But there's no contract. If my mother took a Social Security check that benefited me, I signed nothing. There's no relationship between me and the federal government. How can they come after me?
Correct. Now, look, they've backed off a little bit. Yes,
so now I'm going to get to that. But I just want to diagnose the problem before we get to the half-hearted solution.
Well, the problem is that the Social Security Administration itself apparently by its own calculations overpaid people and discovered it 40 years later. Now, everywhere in the United States of America, except in the federal la-la land, the statute of limitations is 6 years. If you discovered you overpaid somebody, within 6 years you can sue for it back. If it's more than 6 years, it's too late.
Now tonight, because the Washington Post broke this story, brought attention to it, then we covered it last week as well. Now, after suing all these people and getting back a couple $1 billion, I think, over $1 billion, now they've said, oh, never mind, we're not going to, if it's more than 10 years old, we're not going to go after it. But children are still on the hook?
They have made up the law. Children are not on the hook for the debts of their parents unless the children were adults at the time and signed a note to pay back that money.
But that's not what the feds are saying right now. They're still saying kids can be on the hook as long as it was within the last 10 years.
All they've done to try and calm down people like you and me and the millions who are upset with what their government is doing is dial back the 44 years to 10 years. Guess what? It should be zero. You cannot attribute to the child, especially when the child was a baby at the time, the debts of the parents.
Right. Chuck Grassley is going nuts over this, saying these agencies are abusing their power. Got to run quickly.
We've never seen government out of control like this before, between the last segment with the Bureau of Land Management and now this.
We're going to continue to follow this, and we'll find out what they're going to do. Supposedly they're going to give some people the money back, but what about the people they're about to go after, and how are they going to get that money? Anyway, good to see you, Judge.
Of course.